This is how our schools stop tardies.
What is that? What is that?
Now, that is what I want to talk about. I don't want to give any empty promises, but I do want to let you know what happened at our school. And I also want to, because we're teachers, I want to share data with you just so you can see something like this can transform your school and the tardies at your school. So if you're ready, here we go. So we call this a tardy card. At the beginning of the year, all students were given one of these tardy cards. And in fact, this actually is designed to be a quarter thing. So at the end of the first quarter, starting in the second quarter, they'll get another one, and then a third one, and then a fourth quarter one. So we use one of these for each quarter. And to make it even easier to identify things regarding this tardy card, we actually usually change the color, maybe like a yellow one, then a pink one, and different one. So we change the color per quarter, so that's why it's easy to identify. But let me kind of show you a closer look of this so you see exactly how it's designed and what it's intended for. So at the very top, of course, has the name of our school, and it says tardy card. Then it also says quarter one. So that way we can easily identify which tardy card this is. When they change quarter from quarter one, quarter two, three, four. So they're labeled, plus also they change color. The year's there as well. But then, of course, advisory teacher. And so at my school, we have a little 20-minute period at the beginning of each school day called our advisory period. And so we use that to kind of distribute things and collect things school-wide. So like a central place for that. And so that is the name of advisory, and that's my name right there. Then below that is the student's name. Now the key here is this: for the student's name, one thing we found out, and we'll talk more about problems with the tardy cards or things that we realized we had to fix, but you want to make sure the student's name is written in pen, so that way they can't erase it and give it to somebody else. And then it has the grade over here, 6th, 7th, and 8th. So how does it work? Well, when a student comes in late, they give that tardy card to the teacher. And now what the teacher does, all they have to do is they have to assign the tardy card. Now, I want to clarify. This is not for being late to school. This is not for being late to school because, once again, that's not a student's fault. 99% of the time, it's not a student's fault why they're late to school. That's some other external forces going on, parents, rides, car breakdown, who knows. But this is actually trying to keep track of tardies between classes. We'll call them period tardies, so between classes, which student has every responsibility and they have every chance to make sure they're on time. So that's what this is keeping track of. But if a student is late, once again, what they'll do is they'll come in and they will give a card to the teacher, and the teacher will sign it, and then we'll just give a card back to the student. And that's kind of the process for it. But what's important is that by the 5th tardy, when a student gets a 5th tardy, that's when we start issuing consequences. The idea behind this is that if a student knows that they're being held accountable, they know that we are keeping track of their tardies, they are more inclined to do the right thing. As the saying goes, everybody has a plan until they get hit. And that was kind of us. We rolled this out. We had a very good idea what we want to do. But as you start going through, you realize there's some kinks in the armor that we kind of had to tailor up and fix in order to make this run as effectively as possible. So let me kind of share with you those kinks in the armor, those things that we had to improve on. First one is we just had to make sure we had a solid supportive system. What I mean by that is that students are assigned the first 4 tardies, they're okay, but the 5th tardy, they're assigned lunch detention. So in order for this to be effective, we had to have a way to communicate that with administration when they reach that certain spot with us, the 5th tardy. And then we had to learn to, once again, communicate that with administration, but then also from there, administration had to carry out their part and actually issue a detention. It sounds easy, right? But there's a lot to it. Because when we give a detention to a student, how do we communicate with admin? Because we have almost 1,000 students here, and so that can be quickly overwhelming for administration. And so they had to create a form. We use a Google form to submit a request for detention. So that goes to them. But then for them to actually issue detention, that's another process because they have to issue the detention, and then we have to figure out how we're going to get the kids to the detention. What happens if they don't show up? That's a whole other beast that needs to be tackled. So this only works if you have the infrastructure in place where you can carry out the consequences. And I'll tell you how we kind of lacked that at the very beginning. And the other thing we dropped the ball on was this: we never had any really good training for the teachers. So it was a couple of us, I would say about 10 of us teachers, seasoned teachers, that got together and created this. But we did a poor job of communicating this to the other teachers on our school, which we have about 50 teachers. Now, the idea was, of course, we want to, kind of go through the process, how it all goes, but we just never found the time. We always had our Friday meetings, our Friday school meetings, but but that was crammed with everything else. And no matter how many times we wanted to tell students about it, they could just never fit us into for us to kind of go over the entire process. So we did the next best things. We sent out a couple of emails, but there's a difference from just sending out emails to actually walking through the process. And so the last email was sent out, seemed to be the best one, seemed to be the clearest, and it seemed to solve a lot of the problems. But that was another issue we ran into, is how do we communicate this process to all the teachers and make sure we're all on board doing the right thing. But so far, those are all just words. Let's give you some data. Now I'm going to look over here at my screen because I have the data on my computer. And here's what it says. So I'm going to read it. So forgive me for reading from the computer, but this is good stuff. The first week of school, we did not roll this out because, once again, actually first week and a half, kids are getting used to school, their classes and everything else. It's not fair yet to kind of, keep track of all that one. So I'm going to start this on week 2. So on week 2 of school, first week, kids are kind of given a bye, no big deal. Second week, we started rolling this out. And so we gave it out to all the teachers, and teachers then passed it to all the students, and we rolled out this Tardy plan. And so for week 2, here's what we had. After students got the card, week 1, first of all, week 1, here's the numbers. Before these were rolled out, week 1, we had 211 students be late between classes, and there were a total of 436 tardies. That means that kids had more than one tardy. So 211 total kids had tardies, and those 211 kids equal a total of 436 tardies. That was week 1 before we rolled this out. We roll this out, and as soon as we roll this out, the kids now know they're going to be held accountable. And so you can see things start to change. From my experience from doing something like this last year, it takes about 3 weeks to see a change. If you do something for 3 weeks, I guess the whole thing of building a habit, right? 3 weeks, build a habit. But if you do something by 3 weeks, by the third week is when you really see your results. And so I was curious to see how this played out, and it played out exactly as I was hoping it would be. So then week 2, the week we actually rolled this out, we had a total of 177 students tardy and a total of 309 tardies. So a total of 177 students that were late to class, between classes, and a total of 309. So that's kind of, our baseline is our first number, but this is the number that we wanted to improve from. And then it goes on from there. Week 3, it went down 150 tardies and 150 students that were late, and a total of 277 tardies. So you can see it going down. Once the kids are seeing these tardy cards and they know the teachers are signing them, you can see the change. And then here was the best week up until this point. This is week 4, 134 tardies. 134 students that were late, and a total of 211 tardies. So you can see that number dropping. The more students are getting used to this, the know that they see we're students and everything else. But then here's where the kinks of armor. Here is where we started to drop the ball. Because what was going on was this: that the response that we saw, the results we saw, were based upon the students assuming that there were going to be consequences because of what we told them, that it's on the tardy card and all that. But we were dropping the ball as far as all of us teachers signing the tardy cards, and administration was kind of dropping the ball as far as actually issuing detentions. The first week, 2, 3, 4, it is crazy. And so we were not keeping up with it. And students picked up on that. You could just tell students picked up on it. So if a student knows they're not going to be held accountable, they're not worried. And so the behavior started to creep back in here. And so here is what happened. So week 1, kind of high, no tardy card. 2 went down, we introduced carders. 3 went down, 4 went down, but then week 5, boom, we started jumping up again. Week 5, we started going back to where we started. 161 students were late, and then 299 tardies. It pretty much went back up to where we started at when we first started introducing tardy cards. The students were onto the game. They knew there weren't going to be consequences, and because of that, behavior started to creep back up. It was at that point in time that I actually sent the email out to the staff and saying, hey guys, this is how we do the tardy cards. This is it. We got this. I'm telling you, I promise you it's going to work if we just stay with it. I kind of went through the details of what to do. And then we started doing it. More and more teachers were following through. Admin was following through and listened to these results. So it goes from 161 students And the following week, it drops down to 97 students. That's almost a reduction of 50%. And then a total tardies go from 299 down to 140 tardies. So we're going to call that 50%. We saw a 50% reduction in tardies with this system. With the tardy cards put in place, with the teachers signing the tardy cards, with admin following through. And those are results worth bragging about. And so I'm pretty pumped up about that. So what are the consequences if a student is late? Let me go back to that tardy card. So you can, it actually says it on the tardy card. And let me kind of give you a better glimpse of what the tardy card looks like, just so you understand how it's set up. So the big box in the upper left-hand corner, or I guess it's the middle of the paper, right? Left-hand corner, you see it says date, time, initials. And so as teachers, if students late, we just put the date down, the time, period number, and then our initial. And so once a student gets 5 tardies, you just kind of count them, you count the little box. So once they get 5 tardies, then that teacher, where it says referral filled out by, then that teacher is the one that actually puts the request through, once again, we have a Google form, to administration. And so so when a student gets 5 tardies in between classes, the consequence says right below there, so step 1, 2 detentions. And so if a student is late 5 times between classes, this is per quarter, then the consequence is 2 lunch detentions. And then once that's filled up, then we go to the box to the right of it. You look to the box to the right of it, same thing, right? They get 5 more chances, but by the 10th one, if they get a 10th tardy overall, then they get an after-school detention. And we have something called demerits, and that's also part of it as well. But it continues. And then from there, if you look at the box in the bottom left-hand corner, same thing, date, time, initials. But the 15th tardy, they get a Friday school. And then finally, if they get to 20 tardies, the bottom right-hand corner, they get 2 days of in-school suspension, SSR. So that is kind of the system that we have put in place. The other 2 things that we had to account for was this. And what happens if a student comes to school, they don't have their tardy. They're late, but they don't have a tardy card. Because students are smart. They're going to try to figure ways around the system. So we got to make sure this is airtight. And so here's what we came up with. If a student is late to class and they don't have a tardy card, or they refuse to give you a tardy card, then we automatically just assign them a lunch detention. Straight up, just a lunch detention. And then if a student lost their tardy card, we send them to the office, and of course they give them a lunch detention, but then they also go back through everything just to make sure everything was correct. So even if a student does not have a tardy card, their automatic consequence is a lunch detention. And truth be told, once students start getting 5, 10 lunch detentions, we're kind of we know who those are. And you're not going to really find that many students like that. You're always going to have a couple, but the idea, this is put in place to deter the majority, actually I'm going to say 95% of the students for showing up late, and it works. And you can tell that from the data. But wait, we're not done yet. This tardy card is actually part of something we call PBIS. I'm not sure if you have that where you're at. Positive Behavior Intervention and Support, something, you know, all these acronyms, right? PBIS, which the idea behind PBIS is that besides having consequences for negative behavior, you're trying to reward positive behavior. That's kind of the idea behind it. And so we're using the tardy cards for this. Now, we're going to have a big event at the end of each quarter for students that are doing great. Like this previous, well, actually coming up here at the end of our first quarter, we're going to have a fair for our students. So I teach in middle school. We're going to have a fair for our students. And then at the end of the first semester, second quarter, we're going to have something else. We're going to have like a little movie. Kids are going to be pulled out for the last 3 periods of class, and they're going to get a chance to watch a movie, popcorn, and all that fancy stuff for the students that qualify for it. And then for the third, and actually I'm really excited about the third one. The third quarter one, we're going to call it Bob Chilla. We're actually going to have a little mini concert here. We have a local artist in town. He's a rapper, and he's going to come do a performance for us. So I'm excited about that one. That is third quarter incentive. And then our fourth quarter incentive is a trip somewhere. I live in Southern California, so we have all the different parks they can go to. So this is actually part of that PBIS incentive reward and students. And so the idea is this, that if students, I believe don't have more than 5 tardies, so if they never got any kind of consequence for being late, meaning no more than actually 4 tardies, then they qualify for the end of year or those different quarter incentives. There's some other qualifications beyond that, but that's enough. And the other thing is smaller rewards in between. So maybe like every week, like tomorrow, for example, if kids have clean tardy cards, meaning they haven't been late to any class, then they get to leave 5 minutes early to lunch. And there'll be other days where we might give them a special little treat or reward. And so other things like that to reward the students that are doing well. Because once again, we spend so much time on the students trying to alter their negative behavior by consequences. This is the flip side of that, trying to reward positive behavior. So these actually fall in line with that as well. And if you would like a copy of this, just so you can see what it looks like and spend some more time looking at it, and as well maybe even implementing something like this for your school, look in the details below. I'll have a little link there you can click on, so that way you can download a PDF of this, so that way you can see it a little bit better.